Hi everyone, welcome to another Concord and Victory interview. This evening, we are delighted to welcome Dr. Anthony Wallersteiner, head of the Stowe Group and chair of Street Child. Dr. Wallersteiner has led Stowe for more than 20 years, guiding the school through a period of significant growth and development, while continuing to inspire a generation of Stoics.
Alongside his leadership in education, Dr Wallersteiner has also dedicated his time to charitable causes, serving as co-chair of Street Child, where he helps to create educational opportunities for some of the most vulnerable children across the world. His background as a historian adds an additional perspective, as he often mentions his love of his history, and we wonder if he draws on lessons from the past to inform leadership, motivation and performance in his various roles.
The theme of this evening's discussion is performance management. We will explore how Dr. Wallersteiner manages performance at different levels, whether in leading the school, supporting staff, motivating pupils, or guiding charitable organizations, and how history can shed light on effective leadership in the present. Thank you, Dr. Wallersteiner, for meeting with us.
Over your two decades as head of Stowe, what have you found to be the most effective ways of managing performance, both for staff and for pupils?
First of all, Amelia, Charlie, thank you for inviting me onto this edition. It's really interesting to talk about these topics. First, it's about creating a culture where there is an expectation of continuous improvement. So that's the first thing. Second, you need to set down things that can be measured. So it's all very well saying we want excellence, but we have to define what is excellence. And that comes down broadly to excellence in the classroom, so good teaching and learning, or better than good, inspiring teaching and learning, outstanding facilities, so facilities which are going to be better than your competitor schools. And again, you can measure that quite easily. You can look at our facilities and see whether they match up to what other schools are providing. And then the third one is pastoral care. Are your pupils happy? Are they motivated? Are they fulfilled? What's the co-curricular offering? Have you got a broad spectrum of games, activities, and so on? So those are the sort of three areas that you need to look at, and then each one will have subdivisions. But it begins with culture. You have to motivate people. So motivation is extrinsic. So people go to work because they generally that's where they get their income from. But it's also intrinsic. You've got to find out what motivates people to do their best. And usually with teachers, it's a love of subject. It's also because they really enjoy passing on, making a connection with pupils, passing on knowledge, and feeling satisfied that their lives have got purpose. So always making that connection with the person, so that this is more than just a job, because most teachers have got pretty good qualifications and they could do a range of jobs. They don't have to just be teachers. And then there's the last bit is to make sure that all the support teams feel included within the community, a sense of belonging, because the teachers are just the top half of the iceberg. Underneath it, you have an army of people from the maintenance department, the caterers, all the people working on the domestic side, just making sure that the whole thing is working like a well-oiled machine. So it's complicated, and as a manager, you roll up your sleeves and you've got to understand all parts of the school. So this morning, after chapel, the first thing I did was, I do this thing called walk the ship. So I wanted to go to see how what we call snagging. So Bruce was completed as a girls' house over the summer, but we're now in the snagging phase. So we're making sure that all the details are up to the standard that we want to see. And I also went into Walpole to make sure that the conversion of the top floor dormitory has been done to the high standards. So it's all very well, saying that this is what you want to have done, but you need to make sure that you go and see it, and that you talk to the people who are in charge of the projects, and you tell them, what still needs to be done. And for the teaching side, I make sure I keep my hand in teaching. I do a bit of PSHE teaching. I'm going to do some cover history of art teaching for Mr. Christie. I'm available to teach English and history. My rates are extraordinarily good. And that makes the teachers aware that I'm still a teacher. So you've just got to be very flexible, but you have to lead from the front.
Thank you. So performance management often involves balancing encouragement with accountability. How do you approach this balance in leading such a large organization like Stowe?
That's a really good question. So our new acronym is STOICS. The second letter of STOICS is teamwork. So it's all very well me pulling levers and saying, I want to get to 75% A star to B A levels in 2026, or even 80%, whatever the number is. But I'm not going to be able to teach every lesson. I'm not going to be able to observe what's happening in DT or physics or economics. So you've got to really create robust structures where the expectations that you set out very clearly, and I would spend about a month in the summer thinking about what our strategic objectives are, coming up with a strap line like STOICS, and then looking at how do we deliver. And that goes from, we have the executive leadership team. So I've got a senior deputy head, Mr. Copley, and then we have the pastoral deputy head, new pastoral deputy head, Mr. Wright. Dr. Potter is deputy head academic. And then we go through the house parents, we go through the faculty chairs, we then have the heads of departments, we have the individual teachers. And so there's this sort of cascading culture where you set the expectations, you define what the year's objectives are going to be, and then you create a strategy, and then you have measurable targets which are set over a particular period of time. And then you ask people, again, back to the accountability, to do some self-assessment. How do you feel? So we're doing at the moment on my desk, you can see a whole pile of papers. Those are the analysis of the 2025 GCSE and A-level results. And believe it or not, every single result is analysed. So we'll look at somebody's baseline scores, the CAT test, what they are predicted to get, the most likely outcome, the achieved grades, and then we'll look at the value-added grade. Did we do better than we thought we would do, or did we do the same or worse? And then what are the strategies that we can put in place to ensure that we're doing better next year? So that's the accountability. And then, even better if. What do we need to do to improve those results for next year? And some of the results are amazing. The biggest success story for us this year is how brilliantly well the pupils doing BTECs have done. 76% distinction, star distinction or distinction, which for a relatively new exam is a great success. So any kind of suspicion that the BTECs are not achieving their potential has been dispelled. You know, BTECs have done so well. Yeah.
In your view, what are the key qualities of a high-performing team, whether in education or in charity work?
That's another good question. So it's almost to make people achieve things without realizing, to make them feel that they've done this on their own, so that leadership is almost imperceptible, that you are really guiding, coaching, mentoring, encouraging people to fulfill their own innate potential, and not worrying too much about who takes the credit for it. So just to give you a local example, one of the great success stories of the summer was our UCAS and university destinations. We're now up to 24 of our leavers from last summer going to Durham University, one of the top 10 universities in the UK. Now, we've got the head of futures with us in this room, and I could give him all the credit, but he wouldn't want that. There's a whole team of sixth form tutors who put together the references, who help the pupils shape their personal statements, and we've got a team of people who are here in August to help on the day that the results are released. So it is a massive team effort, but you still have to have people to set the targets and to make sure that we don't miss any opportunities. And there are one or two, the things that we managed to achieve. For example, getting somebody into a medical course at Newcastle, and that wasn't in clearing, and it required somebody to just spot an opportunity, to make a phone call and to say, look, you've got an opportunity to get onto a medical course if you make a phone call now. And that person, in fact, I had a letter yesterday from her parents saying without the intervention that we gave, she wouldn't be doing medicine. So it's setting the parameters, the objectives, creating a culture, and then creating a team dynamic where people are just working collectively and not worrying too much about praise. And also, if we make mistakes, and my goodness, we all make mistakes, owning up to the mistakes and learning from them. So, and again, eliminating a blame culture and being a bit more like the Americans, where failure is deferred success. Most businesses in America fail, and by the time you get to your third or fourth business, you're beginning to work it out, and then you get into the great American dream and the success stories. But you'll find that most American entrepreneurs have failed many, many more times than their British counterparts.
The mentoring program is all about older pupils guiding lower pupils to drive and do what they want to do.
Yeah.
What advice would you give us lower SIP pupils to help develop our third form mentees?
Yeah. Remember what it was like when you were in the third form, and how apprehensive you were, how nervous you were about starting, how huge this place seems, how intimidating it appeared, how nervous you were about going to teachers, talking to older pupils. So using social literacy, emotional intelligence and empathy, and reaching out. The best thing about Stowe I think one of the best things about it is the fact that there are far fewer barriers between different age groups, and the breakdown of hierarchies, so that it's quite natural to see a lower sixth former talking to a fourth former or helping a third former, and so having a buddy system or a mentoring system is a really good way also of trying out your leadership, particularly in if somebody is struggling with an academic problem that you find quite easy now that you're in the lower sixth. The best way of learning something is to teach it. The best way of articulating, becoming more confident vocally is the reason I sound articulate and confident is because I do a lot of public speaking. When I first stood up in chapel in front of an assembly, I was so nervous. I had to grip the lectern to stop my hands from shaking, and it took me a term to become fully comfortable with that presentation. So that's what you need to do: practice, practice, practice.
Thank you very much. As a historian, do you see any parallels between great leaders of the past and challenges of leading a school community today?
History is a continuum. So we have the past and the present and the future, and it's all indivisible. So, history never quite repeats itself. It rhymes, and you get echoes of the past. And you draw on multiple experiences. Because I've been doing this job for so long now, nearly a quarter of the school's history, so that's a long time. I tend to draw a lot more on my own experience of headship instead of historical figures, because running a school it's a very particular sort of business. It doesn't really compare with let's say Thomas Cromwell and the Tudor Revolution in government, or Richard I going off on a crusade. So you have to keep things in perspective. It is just a school. I'm not running NASA, the space agency. And there are lots of interesting challenges. Most of my historical training I use on for Stowe House Preservation Trust. So I get asked all sorts of interesting questions about conservation and restoration and architecture, which is a lot of fun because it is part of the school, because we own the freehold of this building. And we're also the tenant. But I tend not to use historical analogies too much in the day-to-day running of the school, because that's much more about people. It's much more about running a business. It's much more about the immediate rather than looking back into the past. And actually, I think the most interesting thing that we're doing now is trying to anticipate what the future of the classroom might look like. How do we harness AI in a way that is positive and creative, and instead of seeing it as a threat, how do we adapt learning so that it's progressive and it matches the individual's needs? Those my prediction is that subjects will come to life because everyone will have a virtual reality headset, which will allow, you'll be able to actually go into the human brain. You'll be able to enter the battlefield of Flanders in the First World War. You'll be able to access any play that's ever been performed and watch it as though you're in the audience. So I think there are so I'm more interested in what's going to happen in the future than thinking back to the past all the time.
As co-chair of Street Child, you work with communities facing extreme challenges. What does performance management look like in a charity context, and how does it compare with education?
So Street Child is an educational charity, so its main goal is to make sure that every child is safe and in education and learning. And again, my role as chair is to have oversight of a charity that's working in 20 different countries, mostly conflict or post-conflict context, and to check that what we say we do, we actually are doing, and to ensure that the grants and the money that is being donated to the charity is being spent appropriately. So to give an example, in October half term in 2024, I went to northeastern Nigeria and got to a town called Maiduguri in Borno province, and it's surrounded by an insurgency group called Boko Haram, which translated means down with Western education. So these are armed insurrectionists who are trying to stop children from being educated and routinely kidnap girls into, and they become child brides. So the charity is setting up schools, giving children counselling, particularly if they have PTSD, so giving them psychosocial care. When I was there, there'd just been a serious flood, and there was an outbreak of tuberculosis and cholera. So we were also helping the United Nations doctors to provide food and medicine and vaccinations, educational hubs, teaching, helping women to set up businesses so that they became self-sufficient. So what I saw was a really high level of programming. I met the country leader, somebody called Jamai. I went to visit the schools. I went to see some of the displacement settlements where people had moved into the area because of the Boko Haram activity nearby. And the great thing about Street Child, because it's a medium-sized charity, it's not like Save the Children. You can, when we raise money from Stowe, you can follow pretty much every pound, every penny to the beneficiaries, and only a very, very small amount goes into admin. There are no Mercedes, there are no, I stayed in a hostel. You do not get to stay in luxury accommodation. It's very low key and it's very, very efficient. And so looking at the numbers, in Nigeria there are 20 million children who are out of school. So looking at the numbers of children who are in school, who are safe and who are learning because of Street Child interventions, and then looking at the progress they're making over time, and many of them are able to then get into government-run schools. That gives you a sense of how efficient and how effectively run the charity is. And I try and do one program visit every year. So the year before I was in Uganda. The year before that I was in Nepal, where there are programs to stop girls being smuggled from Nepal into India and then sex trafficked out. So every country has a unique challenge, and I just try and make sure that I do an audit of one country a year, and then I chair a board, and we look at the numbers, the financial numbers, and we look at the programs. We look at the we manage and assess the safety risks because we're operating in quite dangerous contexts, and we're also, as a charity, you have to report to the Charity Commission as well. So it's fascinating. What I love about it is it's a completely different educational challenge to running Stowe. It's so different. But in the end, what are we trying to do? We're trying to help children achieve their potential, which is the same as what we're doing here.
Dr. Wallersteiner, thank you so much for your insights and your time. To finish, is there any message that you would like to leave for us as mentors, or perhaps for our third form mentees?
I think let's go back to the acronym Stoics, and I think the really important thing to do is to sort of identify, purpose. So Stoicism, teamwork, and then open-mindedness, embracing diversity, inclusion, and equity and belonging, and the creativity I've talked about. And the one thing that I think the message for this term, this year, is that staying positive. Last night you probably all saw the news, gun culture in America. It's very gloomy. Wars in the Middle East, war in Ukraine. We've got Chinese threats against Taiwan. You can doom scroll on your phone all night long and get very, very depressed. And as leaders, staying positive and having a gratitude attitude, remembering, actually there are lots and lots of things that we can be grateful for, and just not getting into that loop of pessimism, and remaining optimistic, and being aware that you can change things, and that's why the change maker philosophy is still so important. But there is a tendency at the moment to be almost hyper focused on problems instead of solutions, and that's what I want you to think about as mentors, is that your job is to come up with solutions, to be positive, accentuate the potential in each and every person that you're out to help. And all of you guys, you've all got massive potential, and don't underestimate your ability to affect change.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Mina, thank you.